Hey guys, Michael from Copper vs Glass, and at this point the Google Pixel 5 is around a year old. Now the 6 and 6 Pro are just around the corner, but I wanted to give you guys my overall thoughts and opinions on the Pixel 5 1 year later. We're going to be talking about the screen, build quality, cameras of course, and the overall battery life, and just in general how it's held up over time with roughly a year's worth of use, no case, no protection, no nothing, just a pure phone for that 12-month period. Let's take a look. So first up then, of course, we have the build quality. Now I've been rocking my Pixel 5 naked for the last sort of 10-11 months, and I haven't had a screen protector, case, skin, nothing on there whatsoever, and it's held up extremely well over that time. Now I'll go onto the screen in a bit more detail, but in terms of the actual screen itself, in terms of scratches and things and abrasion marks and things like that, I haven't had any issues whatsoever. Now like I say, I haven't had a screen protector, I haven't used a glass one or a plastic one, and there's no visible scratches that I can see on the actual screen itself, and I've dropped it a couple of times and not really any issue whatsoever. The actual case itself of the actual phone, I've gone for the sage green model, and again that's held up very well over time. Now yes, it is starting to wear away slightly where it is a plastic outer shell, so it does feel maybe a little bit smoother than it did on day one. It doesn't necessarily have that same texture to it, but overall the actual colour itself was held up really well, and again the build quality being that sort of overall plastic feel, I've not really had any issues with it at all. The buttons themselves have remained very clicky, and also the chrome power button hasn't sort of worn away or anything like I've seen on maybe some other models of devices over that sort of 1 year period. The only issue really that I've had is the USB-C port on the bottom. Some of my charging cables don't necessarily click in like they used to beforehand, so I have had it a couple of times when I've woken up after a night for example, and it hasn't actually charged because the cable has maybe slipped out or just isn't in there as securely as it would have been on day one. But overall, for what is basically a quite cheap phone and also a plastic phone at that, I have been pleasantly surprised with how well the Pixel 5 has held up over time. Obviously you've got these newer devices with completely glass front and back. Once you drop it, it's kind of done for. This one I have dropped a handful of times and it's not really had any issues to it. There's maybe one or two dinks on the corner, but again that's just been on the plastic, so it hasn't kind of cracked or fractured or anything like that whatsoever. So again, pretty impressed with the build quality overall. And now onto the screen, and again that is a point where I have been pleasantly surprised. Obviously the brand new iPhone 13 has only just gone to that high refresh rate screen, whereas I've been using 90Hz for the last 11 months and it has been a great experience. The overall smoothness of the actual screen itself is really nice, and the touch responsiveness hasn't really sort of worn away over time. Sometimes you do get it occasionally where you may have to press it a couple of times with an older device for it to actually pick up on that input, but for me I've not had any issues at all. Now to give you guys a bit of a recap, it is a 1080p screen, 6 inches and at 90Hz. So again, when you compare that to some of the newer devices out there with, you know, a 2.5K screen or even a 4K screen on a Sony device and up to 120Hz, yes, it is slightly flagging behind, but I think the overall smoothness of the device does help massively in regards to how things look and interact on the screen itself. Colours are still very vibrant, and of course you can tweak it to your general preference in regards to if you want it a bit more vibrant or a bit more natural as well. And again, the actual size of the device is something that I've really been enjoying as well. Obviously with these bigger devices and the rumour of the 6 Pro being pretty large, I've really been enjoying just being able to use this device in one hand and getting from each corner of the screen without any issue whatsoever. So while the overall resolution of the screen could definitely be better in 2021, and yes, the screen size could be maybe slightly bigger, I think if you're after that sort of general everyday use where you don't really want to have to worry about using it with two hands or it being too bulky in the pockets, I think the Pixel 5 is a really nice middle ground in regards to size. I would compare it maybe to the standard iPhone 12 or 13 for example, where it's just that perfect size. Again, you've got the newer bigger Galaxy devices and obviously the Fold devices, which are massive. So for me, this one is pretty much the perfect size for a smartphone. And now onto battery life. Now for me this has been a bit inconsistent but very good overall. Now I know that's a bit counterintuitive, but what I mean by that is I'm able to get through a full day's worth of usage no problem. However, occasionally if I do use maybe the camera a lot for example, or I'm using a lot of games on my device, which again I don't really do too often, the battery itself will drop down very quickly compared to just sort of everyday general use. Now I also downloaded an application that allows me to see my overall battery capacity. Now what I mean by that is while my phone says on the screen it charges to 100%, that's going to be 100% of the actual capacity of the battery that is left. Batteries themselves degrade over time. For me, I'm working with around 83% of the original battery capacity, so I've lost 17% over the last sort of 10 to 11 months. Now, I have been using my device with quite heavy usage, using the camera a ton obviously, and just in general social media, games, things like that. So for me, 17% over that full kind of year period basically isn't necessarily the worst, but yes, okay, it's not the best. Now, for me, I haven't had too many issues with the battery like I mentioned, and I still think that even today you don't need to sort of worry about carrying around a battery pack or anything like that. However, if you are going to be shooting a ton of photos and video, for example, you may need to charge it up maybe halfway through the day just to make it right through to bedtime. But again, that kind of depends on your general usage. If you're a light user, no problem whatsoever. However, if you are a very heavy user, you may want to stay a little bit close to the outlet a little bit later on in the day. Now, when it comes to the software, this one's a little bit awkward. I've actually been rocking the Android 12 beta since it released with the version 1, and I'm now on version 5, and I've been having a great time with it. Now, I am going to be doing a full in-depth review on Android 12 when it comes out, but safe to say, in regards to the actual software on my device and the speediness, I've not really had any problems. Yes, the processor itself is not the best processor, and it wasn't even the best one when the phone came out, using the 765G and 8 gigs of RAM. Obviously, comparing that to something like a Snapdragon 888 with 12 gigs of RAM, there is going to be a massive difference. However, the lightness of Android 12 or just Android in general on the Pixel devices, I've not really had any issues. It still feels extremely snappy, opening apps is quick, going into the camera there are no problems at all. So overall the software experience for me has held up really well over time, and again I'm quite excited that with a Pixel device you do get multiple years worth of Android updates. That's not something that a lot of Android manufacturers can say. Even running some of the latest games, I've not really had too many issues. I've been playing Pokemon Unite quite a lot, and I've been using it on ultra settings with 60 frames a second, and it holds up extremely well. You can see from this gameplay here, it may look a little bit off because the video that I'm shooting is at 24 frames, but overall the actual, game quality and the processor has held up extremely well over that length of time. Now, don't get me wrong, if you do play some very high intense games, for example, yes, it may come across some issues, and obviously moving forward over the next 12 months, obviously if you're going to be using the device for 2 years, you may start to see it drop off a little bit over time, but at least at this very moment in time after the first year, it still performs like an absolute champ. I just wish that it processed photos a little bit quicker. And if you're enjoying this video and you're not already subscribed, now is a great time to do so, and turn on notifications so you're notified as soon as that Android 12 review comes out. And then the last thing that I want to talk about is one of the main reasons why someone may pick up a Pixel device is of course the cameras. Now, yes, I know that obviously over time you've got 100 megapixel cameras, 8K video, and just in general a ton more camera features. However, for a standard just, pick up the phone, open the camera and shoot a photo, I still think that the Pixel produces some very nice photos. Now, more on the photos in just a second, and of course I've got a ton of samples to show you, but I did also want to touch on the video side of things, because when the Pixel 5 first came out, there was a really big push from Google in the actual keynote with regards to the video aspect of the Pixel 5, and it's still not amazing. While yes, the 4K video does look quite nice, and the colours themselves aren't necessarily the worst, it kind of lacks that punchiness that you get from some other devices, the microphones aren't necessarily the best either, and overall the actual just picture itself with the 4K video can look a little bit flat. Now, yes, you can change this in the editing software. However, if you are using something from Samsung or even Apple, for example, you don't really have to worry about that. The way that they've got their video locked down is a lot better than what we've got on the Pixel line of devices, and kind of always has been, but I'm hoping that's going to change with the 6 and 6 Pro when they're released. Now, when it comes to the photo aspect, I still have no problem at all with the Pixel 5. Yes, the resolution isn't necessarily the best out there, and if you do zoom in and pixel peep, it can look a little bit strange in some places. However, overall the picture quality, HDR and Google's processing does an amazing job at some really nice photos. The ultra-wide itself is also extremely good. This was the first ultra-wide on a Pixel device, and I've not been disappointed, and I have actually been using it a ton. When we go onto the photos in a second, I'm going to do a selection of standard photos, telephoto where it actually just crops in 2 times, and of course the ultra wide with a little bit of video in there as well, to give you guys my overall sort of thoughts and opinions on using it for photo and video. But safe to say, I've been very impressed, I'm still impressed, and I think even going forward for the next sort of 6 months or so, it's still going to be a very good camera on a smartphone. Now, don't get me wrong, when the Pixel 6 comes out, I am expecting high things from the camera in terms of increased resolution, better video, tons more features, and yes, you do have some other phones phones from Samsung and Apple that are kind of a little bit blowing it out of the water depending on what you're doing with the device. But again, for that overall sort of everyday pick up and shoot photography, it does a really good job. And that's going to do it, guys, for my 12 months later review of the Google Pixel 5. If you're still using a Pixel device, let me know in the comment section down below. It doesn't have to be the Pixel 5. If you're using the 5a, the 4a, or even something from the 3 or before, let me know in the comment section and let me know exactly what your experience is like. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up down below. If you've got any questions or comments, let me know in the comments below or on Twitter at Copper vs Glass. Now, just before I round up this video, I just want to answer one question: whether the Pixel 5 is still worth buying in 2021. Well, considering that on the second-hand market you can pick up the Pixel 5 for around £399 here in the UK, or even less, I still think it's a very good smartphone. There's rumours the Pixel 6 and 6 Pro are going to be coming in at that standard flagship amount of £1,000 and above, so to get all of the great features, software, build quality is pretty good too, and of course the camera, for around £300 to £400, I think it is a steal at that price. If you guys aren't already subscribed, now's a great time to do so, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you're notified anytime I post a video here on the channel. I'm Michael from Copper vs Glass. Thanks very much for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next video.